Your special someone got angry and got into a fight with their sister last night because their sister said you are. Last night, there was a crack in the quiet. It was a conversation that nobody anticipated would become the pivotal moment that altered everything, not a door or a promise. It started with a typical family get-together when everyone assumed they already knew how it would end. Then, like a flash, one sentence fell into the room. The room fell silent as your special person's sister folded her arms, glanced across the table, and whispered, "They're not the person you think they are." Nobody chuckled. Nobody responded. However, the look on your particular someone's face changed so fast that even those seated next to them realized something more profound was going on. Why were those words so potent? What was the reason behind their refusal to let them go without an answer? Hold on, because the next few minutes will show you a side of the person that very few people have ever seen. They initially made an effort to remain composed. They took a deep breath, reclined in their chair, and posed a straightforward query. "What makes you say that?" It wasn't a voice of rage. It was curiosity veiled with disappointment. However, their sister doubled down rather than providing an explanation. She asserted that you were incomprehensible, that you concealed your actual emotions, and that eventually you would only cause confusion in everyone's lives. They didn't yell those words. They felt even louder for some reason. Staring across the room, your particular someone looked for any indication that this was all a misunderstanding. No one was present. With each second that went by, the conversation grew more intense. No one inside seemed to notice as the rain gently tapped against the glass outside. Everyone sensed that something had changed. This is the element that nearly everyone overlooked, though. When someone asked you a question, your particular someone didn't respond. Someone had questioned what they had personally experienced, which is why they were reacting. Wait for the following turn before assuming you know where this is headed. Because no one could have predicted the weight of the truth concealed behind their quiet. They got to their feet without speaking. The silence that had descended upon the room was broken when the chair slid backward across the floor. With a composed gaze that somehow conveyed more passion than yelling could, they stared straight at their sister. They answered, "You don't know them the way I do," at last. The sister's expression changed to one of uncertainty for the first time that night. "You've built an opinion from moments that don't tell the whole story." She had anticipated consent. She had anticipated reluctance. She never anticipated total assurance. Memories emerged one by one. Little things that everyone else had missed. The way you maintained your composure when people hurried to pass judgment. The way you listened rather than attempting to dominate every discussion. The unassuming generosity that seldom sought praise. All of a sudden, the conversation was not about disproving anyone. It turned into a defense of a person's character. However, the sister reached inside her bag, took out something unexpected, and discreetly set it on the table just as it appeared that the tension was starting to ease. Every expression on your special someone's face altered the moment they saw it, since whatever they were looking at had the ability to refute everything they believed to be true. Nobody anticipated that one picture would be so ambiguous. It wasn't overly dramatic. At first sight, it wasn't shocking. It appeared nearly unremarkable, taken in passing, the kind of image that people walk by on a daily basis without giving it any attention. However, your special someone didn't perceive a typical image. They witnessed an entirely out-of-context moment. No one spoke for a heartbeat as their sister softly pulled it closer and murmured, "This is why I said what I said." Refusing to make snap judgments, your special someone examined every nuance, shadow, and expression. They saw something that no one else had. The tale they had just heard didn't fit the timing. The background provided hints that went against the presumptions. Not even the expression on your face at that precise moment suggested that you were concealing anything. It was the look of someone trapped in a situation that no one had tried to comprehend. That's when your special someone glanced up slowly and remarked, "A picture can freeze 1 second. However, a snapshot can never tell a whole tale." Everyone knew deep down that they had been judging a single frame rather than the entire voyage, and those statements created an awkward stillness in the room. Keep your distance since the next revelation completely alters the course of the discussion. If you find stories about meaningful connections, trust, and hidden truths compelling, please share your opinions below and subscribe to help these stories reach others who might benefit from them as well. Then an entirely unanticipated event occurred. The sister started to lose confidence rather than stand up for herself. She acknowledged that she had not personally witnessed the event. The picture had been shown to her by someone else. What it apparently meant had been explained by someone else. Almost immediately, the confidence in her voice vanished. Your loved someone leaned forward with real concern rather than rage. "Have you ever wondered where it originated?" Softly, they asked. The question hung in the air longer than anyone had expected. "No" was the response. Pieces that had appeared to be perfectly attached began to disintegrate gradually. Unverified messages had been repeated. Quietly, assumptions had become facts. Opinions had taken on the appearance of fact. Nobody had bothered to look at the foundation upon which the entire dispute had been formed. Your special someone no longer cared about winning an argument. They desired the truth, which was considerably more valuable. The anxiety in the room gradually gave way to their cool resolve. And even their sister sensed that the focus of this discussion was shifting from blame to understanding. However, a phone that was quietly laying on the table flashed up with a fresh notification just as everyone believed the riddle had finally been solved. They both exchanged an unexplainable gaze at the sender's name. Although the message was brief, it was powerful enough to immediately end all conversations. Carefully opening it, your loved someone read every word twice as if they were trying to find something between the lines. Their look changed from one of inquiry to one of quiet comprehension. They rotated the television to face their sister without uttering a word. Her eyes grew wide. The message verified that you had been subtly shaping people's perceptions of you for weeks. Not by blatant lies, but by carefully chosen details that presented an incomplete picture. Everything made sense all of a sudden. The awkward exchanges, the odd miscommunications, the sudden hesitancy. Your special someone exhaled slowly, almost glad that there was finally a reason for the misunderstanding. The mystery was solved, but they weren't relieved. Their faith in you had never been misplaced, so they were relieved. However, the same person sent them another message before either of them could decide what to do next. This one had a request that was so unexpected that the two siblings sat motionless because what they were asked to do next could completely change all of their relationships. Forgiveness was not requested in the second message. It made no justifications. Rather, it had only one surprising request. Before anyone else hears my side of the story, please come see me tomorrow. Your particular someone repeatedly read the sentence, feeling that there was much more to it than what was shown on the screen. In private, their sister acknowledged that she had no idea the matter would get this complicated. They were no longer on opposing sides for the first time since the talk started. Standing next to each other, they were attempting to comprehend how so many presumptions had developed from so little reality. The room's atmosphere softened. Thoughtful silence gradually replaced the frustration that had pervaded every space. However, your special someone was unable to answer one question. What had happened overnight if someone was now eager to explain everything? Why hold off until now? Long after the session was over, they couldn't just move on because of that unresolved question. Hold on to this, since nobody was ready to hear what will be revealed the following morning. The morning came with a peculiar serenity, the kind that frequently precedes a significant turning point. Your particular someone picked a quiet corner where each passing face seemed to tell a different story, and they arrived at the meeting spot a few minutes early. Finally, the sender of the mails showed up. They appeared anxious, not because they were afraid of being addressed, but rather because they were aware that the truth would make them acknowledge errors they could no longer deny. They acknowledged that they had repeated talks without fully comprehending the topic after a protracted silence. Something crucial had been omitted each time a detail was transferred from one individual to another. Small miscommunications gradually developed into believable tales, which in turn became acknowledged truths. They acknowledged that they had never witnessed the events they recounted. All they had done was believe what matched their pre-existing story. Your special someone carefully distinguished between regret and honesty while listening without interjecting. But one particular element caught my attention right away. The miscommunication didn't start with this. It was merely the midway. Long before these discussions took place, someone else had subtly initiated everything. As the discussion appeared to be coming to a conclusion, the individual produced a little notebook they had been carrying for months by reaching into their luggage. They said, "I think this belongs in your hands now." There were scrawled dates, brief notes, and lost conversations that linked parts that no one had ever considered. A few pages detailed instances in which people purposefully omitted crucial information. Others recounted how innocuous remarks had gradually evolved into presumptions as they permeated subsequent conversations. One thing became more apparent with each page your particular someone turned. You had never realized how frequently your name had been mentioned, but it wasn't by the individuals you would have anticipated. For the first time since the start of their adventure, they silently grinned as they closed the notepad and turned to face the window. Not because all the answers had been discovered, but rather because the door to the true truth had finally opened. Then, as they got up to go, a folded note fell to the ground from between the pages. 6 words that changed everything in an instant were written across the front. It was never just about you. More than anything that had been said before, those 6 words reverberated. It was never just about you. With steady hands, your special someone unfolded the note, anticipating another mystery or accusation. Rather, they discovered a sincere explanation that, in a way that no one had ever thought of, related years of miscommunications. The note made clear that you were not the real cause of the tension. It had developed from long-standing family anxieties, unresolved discussions, and presumptions that had subtly followed each person from one stage of life into the next. Simply said, your name had come to represent feelings that were present long before you were involved. Your special someone had a very significant realization at that very moment. Sometimes people make snap judgments about new people based on their past experiences. Although it was unfair, it provided a wealth of explanations. For the first time in a long time, they felt clarity replacing confusion as they peered out the window as sunlight broke through the clouds. If you're wondering what will happen next in this story, you might want to subscribe and share it with someone who thinks that all relationships should be understood before being judged. Because nobody in that family anticipated the truth that is revealed in the following moment. Your special someone brought the notepad and the folded note home later that night. Their sister was silently waiting, no longer defensive but rather inquisitive. The argument had begun the previous evening at the kitchen table where they sat together. This time, there were simply sincere conversations and no hurried opinions or shouted voices. They went through the notes together, page by page. Each additional detail created a new inquiry while providing an answer to an existing one. They both realized how a single misinterpreted moment, an incomplete narrative, or a missing sentence could completely alter someone's reputation. I thought I was protecting you, but I never realized I was protecting an assumption instead of the truth, their sister said quietly, lowering her gaze. Your special person didn't criticize her. The room that had once been tense now carried something much stronger, mutual respect built through honesty rather than certainty, and just as they thought every hidden piece had finally been uncovered, the notebook revealed one last surprise. They just nodded, realizing that true growth begins when someone is willing to see beyond their first impression. Tucked into the very last page was an unopened envelope addressed directly to your special someone, with a handwritten message on the front that said, "Open this only when you're ready to stop guessing." They looked at each other silently before carefully cracking the seal, and there was no further explanation inside. It was an invitation to meet someone who was involved in every miscommunication from the start, and it came with a single sentence that changed everything in an instant. You've heard all the versions except the most important one. Your special someone carefully folded the letter, knowing that the next conversation wouldn't only address unanswered questions. The invitation led your special someone to a peaceful cafe tucked away from the bustle of the city, the kind of place where conversation seemed to linger longer than the coffee on the tables, and the person waiting there didn't greet them with dramatic words or emotional speeches, potentially completely redefining how everyone, including their sister, would see you from that day on. Rather, they discreetly moved a small folder across the table and said, "Before you believe anything else, I want you to see how easily a story can change when one detail is missing." Inside were timelines, forgotten notes, and old text messages that fit together like puzzle pieces that no one had bothered to finish. They all showed the same pattern. Every misconception about you had begun with a genuine moment, but somewhere along the line, crucial context had vanished. A polite gesture had been misinterpreted as distance, a silent choice had been taken as rejection, and a delayed response had somehow turned into evidence of indifference. There's one last layer to this story, though, and it explains why they defended you so fiercely the night before. As the conversation went on, the stranger smiled gently and shared something that completely caught your special person off guard. None of those conclusions matched reality. Your special person leaned back, almost amazed that something so simple had grown into such a complicated situation. They asked, Do you know why none of those rumors ever convinced you? Before you could respond, they went on, because every time you were actually with them, your own experience told a completely different story. That realization landed with surprising force. Your special person remembered countless ordinary moments that had quietly spoken louder than any opinion ever could. They realized that trust isn't built in dramatic moments because of the patience you displayed when no one was around, the respect you showed without expecting recognition, and the composed way you handled misunderstandings instead of causing more of them. Suddenly, those memories overshadowed every doubtful voice that had filled the preceding weeks. Before departing, the stranger said one last thing that stuck with your special someone long after the meeting was over. Sometimes the people closest to us aren't trying to hurt us, they're just repeating a story they never realized was incomplete. It's built in hundreds of quiet interactions that nobody else notices. And as they left, they felt lighter than they had in a very long time. That night, your special someone came home with a certainty that rumors could no longer shake. Their sister saw the difference right away. Their expression had changed from one of frustration to one of quiet confidence. Together, they decided that the next step was to give everyone involved a chance to hear the whole story, not to prove someone wrong. They put the folder on the table between them, not as evidence against anyone, but as proof that understanding always grows stronger than assumption when people are willing to listen. Your special someone's phone vibrated again just before the conversation ended. This notification wasn't from the stranger or anyone in the family. Rather, it came from someone whose name hadn't appeared until now. Someone who had silently observed every misunderstanding from the sidelines, and it only contained one sentence. I'm prepared to reveal the complete truth tomorrow, and I know the missing piece you've all been looking for. Suddenly, it became apparent that the greatest revelation had not yet occurred, it was only getting started.